Hello and welcome back to my channel. It feels like it has been forever since I've sat down and talked on here because it has. Obviously, I had my baby. You can tell by the title of this YouTube. Right now, she is with my mother-in-law because I was like, I want to sit down and I want to film this and chat about it. But yeah, I am a mom now, which I just cannot believe. Like saying that out loud just feels surreal. And I am just so in love with our sweet girl. Her name is Hat and Grace. I did post a little birth vlog, but that really did not capture the full story of her birth. It was more of just like some cute video clips that we did on a camcorder just for like a nostalgic effect to go back and remember. But I have a lot to share just about the third trimester, about her birth, and then also chatting about the fourth trimester, which is postpartum. And I feel like I have a lot to chat about, so I'm just gonna hop into things because I feel like this might be a little bit of a longer video, but then I feel like we're gonna kind of wrap up these like pregnancy videos where it's like sit down and talking and kind of just like move on with some more lifestyle vlogs again. I mean, I'm sure I might have videos here and there, but I feel like this is my last one to kind of just like close all of the first trimester, second trimester recap videos that I've been doing, which I do have those. I have a whole pregnancy playlist. So that's what I'm saying. We're kind of ending this playlist that I've had going on with this video. Let's hop into things. I have a whole thing of notes on my phone, and I think we're just gonna start off with the third trimester and just go linearly. Is that a word? I don't know. But what I'll do is kind of just go over mainly just like how I was feeling at this point, because I feel like that's what I would kind of touch on is just some of the symptoms and things. So if you are in pregnancy and you're kind of like headed into the third trimester, wondering what to expect, looking into like birth stories and stuff like that to mentally prepare, this is at least what I experienced in the third trimester. I felt like some of the first trimester woes were back. I definitely felt tired again. Even stuff like gagging on my toothbrush, which was just weird. Like I didn't totally feel like nauseous or anything, but it was just like, oh, that's weird, because I had that a little bit in my first trimester. And then also just like little light headaches. Like I just kind of go like first trimester, second trimester, and then it's like third trimester. And I feel like I would just kind of like cycle through bad symptoms. Luckily, any troublesome symptom I was having usually would last like 3 to 4 days, and then we'd go on to something else. So I was definitely experiencing some heartburn and like acid reflux, and it would be like really bad for a few evenings, and then it would kind of go away. So yeah, definitely dealing with some heartburn, and there were times where it was like pretty darn uncomfortable, but thankfully it wasn't like an everyday thing. Like I feel like some people have it so much worse throughout their entire day, like almost to the point that they can't do things, and thankfully that was not the case with me. I also felt so swollen, and I feel like I would look in the mirror and I didn't even recognize myself because my face just looked so full. My toes looked chubby, and my fingers, like I just felt peak swollen, and I feel like I was fine with it. Like I wasn't too concerned with how I looked because I was like, you know what, this is just pregnancy and I am carrying a child. That is a very common thing, but I definitely felt uncomfortable and was ready to just start feeling like myself again. Like I feel like at that point you're just ready to have the baby and just get back to wearing your normal clothes. Like I feel like I was cycling between like 3 things at that point. I already look at myself and I'm like, oh my gosh, my swelling in my face has went down so much. And yeah, so my third trimester was just extremely difficult, not pertaining to pregnancy. If you follow me on some of my other channels, you probably know it's not really something that I want to go into, but it was just an extremely difficult time in my life. And then you add being 9 months pregnant on top of that, and it was extremely difficult. And given this, I was like, you know what? I am due for a really smooth labor. I need easiness. I deserve this. I deserve a smooth labor. And spoiler alert, things did not go to plan. So we will get into my birth story a little bit. So baby girl was extremely cozy inside, and I was over my due date by a week, and so they were recommending that I was induced. I was like, okay, so I had my induction scheduled ahead of time for September 16th, and I'm doing all the things. I'm having like the raspberry leaf tea, I'm having dates, I'm going curb walking, and she was just cozy. She was like, you created such a cozy space in here and I don't want to leave. So I went in the evening, it was 8 p.m. and I was 1 centimeter dilated and 50% effaced, and I was having little contractions that I actually didn't even know about. They just informed me and showed me on the screen, so I was not feeling them, but I was already having like a little bit on my own. So then they gave me Cytotec, which I took by mouth at 9:45, and by 10:30 I was having contractions. I think I wrote, yeah, every 2 to 3 minutes I was having contractions, so they really picked up. They felt like little twinges at this point, so I wasn't too uncomfortable, but I definitely was feeling them and they were consistent, and I could see them on the monitor, which was so exciting because it was like, okay, things are progressing. So I watched a TV show with my husband and it was nice, and then we're like, okay, you know, we can try to go to bed, get some sleep, because inductions can take a few days. So I really didn't know like how quickly things could progress, or based off of this, like, am I closer to having the baby? Like, it was just hard to know. I did not end up sleeping because of everybody coming in to check on me and because of the contractions, because they really were starting to pick up. And somewhere between like 12:30 and 1:30 in the morning, the contractions got so painful that I was just like on the verge of tears. Dylan's sleeping a little bit and I'm like, oh, I don't want to wake him, but every few minutes I'm like, holy crap, this hurts. So I wake up Dylan and I'm like, I think I'm gonna get the epidural, which is a decision that I did make ahead of time, that I wanted it. It'll just make it more doable for me, more of an enjoyable experience. After talking to friends, I was just like, this feels like the right decision. And then maybe for like a second baby, when I have more of an understanding of labor, then maybe I could always try an unmedicated birth if I'm interested in that at that point, because I'll have a little bit more of an idea of what to expect and can prepare myself mentally for that. I think the build up to getting the epidural, like, because people, I don't know, make it sound so dramatic, like I started getting the shakes, which I do know that like people get like the labor shakes, so I don't know if it was like a little bit more of an anxiety thing or if it was that, but either way I just start shaking and my husband's like, are you good? And the nurse was like, this is pretty normal. I got the epidural around 2 a.m. and it definitely gave me relief and I felt good. I really could not feel any of the contractions anymore. And while they were in, they checked me again and I was 70% effaced. So again, things are progressing. They said that my water was like right there and they could tell that it was like gonna break soon, which I think it was 15 minutes later, like the nurse was still in the room doing stuff and I was like, yeah, I think my water just broke. So at this point I'm like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Like she could be born today, because now it's September 17th. But yeah, feeling really positive because I'm like, okay, things are progressing. I don't feel like this is gonna take a few days like some inductions do. And then the energy started to shift a little bit. Basically, the nurse came back in after a little bit and was saying that like she was sleeping on the monitor. So they were just showing me like she didn't have like a ton of movement going on. Basically was describing that like my body was doing what it was supposed to, but like we needed her to work with us and like move down, and that wasn't really happening. So we wanted to get her awake and to stop sleeping. So they tried stimulating her with a few things. I had some apple juice and some glucose water, and I don't know that they really, like anything that we tried, maybe like she would move a little bit for a second and then she would kind of go back to sleeping. So we did that. They did like a little vibration thing on my stomach to see if that did anything. And then they started putting me in different positions using the peanut ball, and she would maybe respond for like a little bit and then she would go back to sleeping. And the entire time the nurse was messaging the midwife, so she'd say like, okay, she wants us to try this, or like, oh, she was happy because she saw she moved a little bit during this, but then she kind of stopped. So she was talking to the midwife the entire time. I was getting updates, and then all of a sudden, like after we were trying some of the different like position changes, like I was literally on my like hands and knees on the bed and like mind you, I have an epidural, so I like can't really move and can't feel things. And so then she was like, I'm gonna message the OB. And during this time, we actually had the anesthesiologist come back in because like I said, I'm moving around, can't really feel things. Like my legs are literally like dead weight. Like I can't move them myself really, so they're helping like position me. And I kind of felt like the tape rolled on my back where she had like the epidural taped in. And so we decided to call the anesthesiologist back in, just take a look at that, make sure that it wasn't moving or anything. So she comes in and checks on it, and over her like walkie-talkie, whatever they use, I hear a section LD room 8. And I was like, wait, what? And so she walks out of the room, and I turn to Dylan and I'm like, section, am I about to get a C-section? Like, are they about to tell me that I'm going for a C-section? Because I'm like, LD, labor and delivery room 8. Like, they're talking about me. So instantly, like, my heart sank a little bit because I was like, what's going on? Maybe I heard that wrong. But I could just like tell that like with messaging the doctor, like things were just not feeling kind of right. And within a few seconds, the nurse walks in and she's like, I'm sorry, I don't have the best news. Like the doctor wants you to have a C-section, and basically was explaining that, nothing that we were doing was working too much to keep her awake. And watching her on the monitor, her heart rate just started to dip a little bit with my contractions. So from my understanding, it was kind of like they wanted to get ahead of her really like dipping more, so it wasn't like an emergency C-section. So they were starting to see this pattern and didn't want it to be an emergency C-section because in that case my husband couldn't be in the room, I'd be put under, and obviously just you don't want it to be an emergency. Like, so I call it like an unplanned C-section because it wasn't an emergency per se, but they did end up like having me go for a C-section. This was at 6:30 in the morning. So they were basically like, you're about to go because we have like scheduled C-sections all day. So we want to get ahead of those. So you're going in, because I had the epidural already. Like I was all set up. So all of a sudden there's like 5 people in my room prepping me, like doing everything, giving me like medicine. Like I don't even know what was going on fully. And next thing I know, I'm getting like rolled down the hallway. And the entire time, like I'm wondering, like, is she okay? Like I think some of it is like I didn't want to ask questions at the time because I was scared, because I didn't want to panic or have anxiety too much by asking too many questions. And if they're like, yeah, she's not doing well, like that would have sent me into a spiral. So I knew it was kind of better for me mentally not to ask too many questions. But I think now that I'm processing things, like I am kind of curious, like what did her sleeping mean the entire time? Or like, I just want maybe just some more information to make sense of it in a way. But yeah, so Dylan was sent to go prep himself and get into like scrubs and everything, and he had like 2 seconds to call my dad and just say like, hey, so she's getting sent for a C-section. And my dad was like, oh no, because obviously like my family had just known that I had been through a lot, and like everyone was just kind of pulling for a smooth labor, and then getting told, actually now you're getting sent for an unplanned C-section. Just, I think people would just felt for us in that scenario. But yeah, so I'm getting like all set up on the table. I'm in the operating room, and there's just again like a million people, which everyone there was so fun about it. Like they were like, oh, she just wants more people at her birthday party, she's taking a sunroof exit. Like their energy was just so positive throughout it. So that was really nice because it helped kind of make me feel a little bit calmer and just like didn't allow me to get in my head too much, because everyone around me felt like high-spirited and everyone was just so good about like making sure I felt okay. And basically I'm strapped down to a table, like my arms are strapped down, and Dylan walks in like right when they start, and it was just almost so I was there but like not fully there in a way. I was kind of processing, but also like the thinking about it feels just so like jumbled in my head in a way, because I'm like, was that a real experience? Like it kind of felt like a dream, I guess. And I guess in some ways I almost didn't even have time to be nervous with how quick things went from like, okay, we're going into the room, we're going to a C-section, because they started at 7. So 6:30 basically I'm told, and 7 I am like in the operating room having my C-section. And so the C-section itself was pretty quick. Like, it did not feel very long, especially because it's so quickly that they get the baby out, and then like the rest of the time they're spent, you know, putting you back together. And so I feel like because I knew she wasn't responding great, and like it was my body that was progressing and that she wasn't, it made me very worried about her well-being. So immediately hearing her cries, no words could ever encapture what that feeling felt like. Just hearing her, knowing she was okay. But then they were saying like, oh, like something about her breathing, because I guess that's kind of typical with a C-section, is like she might have some more amniotic fluid in her lungs. And so then I'm panicky again. But then they were like trying to explain to me that that was normal. But it's this whole thing of like, is she okay? Is she not okay? Like, just worrisome, obviously. But just hearing her cry, and they like lifted her up to show me, and they're like, she's so beautiful. And that was just so refreshing. And then they came over and set her on my face, which was so funny because it's like, who are you in a way? But it's like this sweet little creature. And she's like putting her fingers like almost in my mouth. Her face is on me just crying. And actually so the nurse that was in the labor and delivery room with us, like she was technically done with her shift, but she came in for the C-section. She wanted to see things through with us, which was so kind. And she actually took Dylan's phone and took pictures throughout the whole thing. So I have like these beautiful pictures of her like on my face with her hands on my face that are just so special to me because, you know, I didn't have the birth that I expected, but here I have these like stunning photos of my baby girl's birth that I feel like not everybody gets. You know, I didn't hire a photographer, so now I like am able to kind of like relive it, especially because my head, like I said, like it just felt so dreamlike. And now going back and looking at the photos and kind of getting to do that, I guess, is just nice. Literally, like I have pictures of her like basically being removed, which is like some are graphic and they're like in black and white. I can insert one of Dylan with her that's like sweet, because after that they took her over to the little table to weigh her and he went over with her. So I have those, but the other ones I feel like are just more personal to me, so I just don't really want to share them because they're just special moments, I feel like, for just us. But he was with her on the table and he also cut her cord, so he still had that experience with her. But he was like, it was really tough because, you know, you're still getting stitched up on the table, and here I'm like, do I go over with her? Do I be with our baby? So he was kind of going back and forth a little bit depending on like where things were at. And by the time I knew it, they were pretty much done and we were going over to the recovery room with her and things were good. Everything went well with my surgery and everything went well with her. It was just the most refreshing thing because obviously labor did not go to plan. I planned on it being very different, but I was just so grateful to have a healthy and safe baby, because in the end that's really all that matters. And that is like what I wrote at the top of my birth plan. I was like, most important thing is that me and the baby are healthy and safe. That is the end all be all. And I know this is a little TikTok trend, but I figured I would go through and give you a quick rating of the pains of labor. So IV, I gave a 7 out of 10 because I have really small veins, so they went in my hand and they're like pushing, didn't work. Then they went up into my forearm, again, didn't work. Then they decided to go with a smaller needle in my hand. So that was not fun because I was poked 3 times and they're like really like pushing it in and the needle's too big. And yeah, that was really painful actually. I feel like if it was just once, it would have been painful, but it would have been done. But having to go through that pain a few times, not fun. Contractions before the epidural, I put at an 8 out of 10 because like I said, I was like nearly in tears and I was like, this is only gonna get worse. I think I have low pain tolerance, and so much respect to people who don't get the epidural because wow, I can't imagine what that would have felt like intensified. Epidural, I gave a 3 out of 10 because, you know, it was a little uncomfortable. They're basically giving you the numbing before the big needle, which is what I felt. And so I gave that like a 3 out of 10 because it was just kind of like a pinchy shot, but it's like in your back, which is weird. But then you don't feel the actual big needle, I think. Contractions after the epidural, 0. Like I said, I couldn't feel them. Water breaking, 0. Couldn't feel that. I just kind of felt like a pop in like water, I guess. And then C-section, 0. I was completely numb. The recovery, I gave a 7 out of 10. Actually, you know what? I would give like an 8 or 9 out of 10, probably a 9 out of 10, was them pressing on my stomach after the C-section. That was not fun because the anesthesia is starting to wear off and they're like pressing down on you to try to get like blood out, I think. And that was really painful. So I would give it that, but the overall recovery, I gave a 7 out of 10 because it was tough. It was very tough getting out of bed. Like, I did not mentally prepare for a C-section or the recovery of it. So I really, you know, didn't know anything about it. And so trying to get out of bed, I was basically like slithering out of bed, and just some of those things, like I'm still a little bit tender and it has been a month. So my husband always has to remind me, like, you had a major surgery, but it doesn't feel like it because you're immediately taking care of a child and you're not recovering from a surgery like you normally would. So in some ways it doesn't like mentally compute like that. But yeah, going through the recovery of that wasn't fun, but I really was fine with just like rotating Advil and Tylenol. I never went on anything stronger than that. So that kind of speaks to the recovery a little bit, I guess. But I definitely probably felt a little bit more pain because of that and just kind of suffered through that. I did have trapped gas in my shoulder, which I guess is really common because at first I'm like, I have extreme shoulder pain. This is while I was in the hospital. And they were like, oh, that's gas. And I was like, what are you talking about that that's gas? But I guess it's like a really common thing to have it in your shoulder. And so that was pretty uncomfortable because I have this pain down in my abdomen and pain up here, and I like could not get in and out of bed. So that was really tough. Breastfeeding after a few days at home when my milk started to come in, 10 out of 10 for that one. Oh my gosh, I would be like clenching my toes. Like people described it as like toe curling pain to me, and I'm like, yeah, I was like about to throw up from how painful it was. But now it's better. Like now I would give it like a 0 out of 10. Easy. So if you are planning on breastfeeding, just know that there might be some extreme pain, but it really is just like the first, like, I don't know, like 10 seconds of the latch where it's like, that's bad. And then it would kind of get better. And then overall, over time, it just got better too. But I was not prepared for that pain. And so yeah, that's kind of like a run through of some of the pains of what my birth story was, and hopefully in some sense that can take the fear out of a C-section if somebody is going through that, because like the C-section itself wasn't as bad as, like, I don't know, maybe it sounds, but obviously you are going through a major surgery. There is a different recovery to it. You know, like I can't hold more than my baby for 3 months after, so definitely a different recovery for it. But in the end, if it's what keeps the baby safe and you safe, I feel like it's just kind of like, okay, you just rise to the occasion and you get through it. But yeah, that is my birth story. And now we can do a little postpartum recap. Obviously, I am still going through postpartum, so like this is just, you know, the first month out of it that I'm recapping. But the first thing is that I was not prepared for how hard that hormone crash is. I feel like, you know, people talk about like some postpartum depression or anxiety or like postpartum being hard, but I didn't specifically know that there was like a hormone crash that's pretty intense, like 4 to 5 days out, until reading it online after I had this crash to like help explain it. And then over time it starts to regulate. So all of a sudden, like, I'm okay in the hospital. Like, obviously I just had a C-section. I'm going through a lot. It's just an emotional time. But then all of a sudden, a few days go by, I go home, and then it all hit me. And I genuinely felt like a shell of myself. Like, that hormone crash was just extremely difficult for me. And I feel like I never saw people talking about like the intensity of this crash, which maybe it was just that case for me, but I feel like I just didn't have that understanding prior, and I didn't feel like I really heard people talk about it. Okay, I might need to rapid fire at the end here a little bit because little lady is ready to feed. But yeah, so obviously I'm recovering from a major surgery while trying to take care of the most perfect tiny human, which I have no experience with. So I am learning about that. I am sleep deprived and not able to use sleep to recover. Obviously, I didn't get sleep that night in the hospital because that was an all-nighter. And then I'm going into a baby who is feeding around the clock, and I'm learning how to breastfeed, which is also draining, which I learned that I need to have a lot more water and food, and was dealing with a lot of emotions from things in my life. So it was really, really tough. To be honest, I have never felt more low in my life than a few days after. Like, obviously I loved her and I felt no different about her, but like me as a human being, like I was just trying to survive for her and like just get through for her. Like, I'm looking at her and I'm like, you're so beautiful and I need to be able to get through this for you. And then also, to add another component to that, I felt very dizzy because I didn't take care of myself for one day and didn't realize that I wasn't having enough water because I'm just so focused on taking care of her, and then got to like noon and realized I had no water. You need to be having a ton of water. And so I took my blood pressure because I was feeling dizzy with the monitor that they sent me home with, and I had really high blood pressure. And so then I started dealing with anxiety surrounding getting some high blood pressure numbers and not wanting to go into the hospital and be hospitalized and having to deal with that with a new baby. So that was an added anxiety that I was not expecting to deal with, on top of all these other postpartum hormone crash things, is now having this high blood pressure to deal with. So that was not fun. But yeah, I think it was hard because it took some of the joy out of that first week, and I really just wanted to be joyful and soak in all of her perfect newbornness, which, you know, as time went on, things got much better. Like, just each day after those 4 to 5 days, it started to get better and better. And thankfully, I had so much family show up for me to help. Dylan was a huge help, but having family in town and just like making sure I was getting water, making sure I was getting food, and making sure that I was able to get by to just do whatever I needed to take care of her was just huge. I feel like so many people online talk about, you know, how they wish that they didn't have so many family visitors, or like they didn't want people to come to their house and hold their baby because they wanted to hold the baby and wanted people just helping out around the house. But I really had an opposite experience where I was so thankful to have people in town and helping us and around our house, and honestly really thankful when I had people who could hold her, because it allowed me to shower or just, you know, do something a little bit for myself and to really just hold myself together. But yeah, by the point that I was 2 weeks out, I felt so much better, and then 3 weeks out, so much better, and now 4 weeks out, I feel a lot more like myself than I have in a long time, and it's just really nice kind of just feeling myself come back. I know that postpartum is a journey, and so I'm gonna continue to go through postpartum, getting through that first little bit, and now really feeling like I've got more confidence as a mom too. I've just fallen so much more in love with her every single day. I've been able to enjoy her more, and she's just a really great baby. I feel so lucky. She is a good eater, a great sleeper, oh my gosh, and she's just consolable, and I just have such a good girl. And I know that it might not always be that way, you know, there are going to be different challenges, and there are, but I just feel so lucky for her. She is such a good baby, and I'm just so in love with her. And my camera's about to die, my baby is hungry, so I'm gonna wrap this up. Sorry it's such a quick and abrupt ending, but I have been chatting for a while now. But thank you so much for watching and listening about my experience. Hopefully this helps you, you know, feel not alone in your experience, or if you're prepping, just like having different things to mentally prep for, because no one can really prepare you until you're in it. But I feel like there are some things that maybe like I wish I knew, or like I wish I had heard differently, because there are so many different experiences. But overall, thank you so much for watching. I am in newborn baby heaven over here, and I'm excited to get back to doing some videos on here. All right, see you in my next video.